You treat cathedrals built by man as the outcome of thought, and therefore of no value to understanding. But to me, they seem to be inspired by some universal energy linking the two most important factors of man's life, matter and spirit. This unity is the core and movement of humanity. Is there no spiritual value in the inspired works of man? What do you answer to this question? Cathedrals have been built, according to the questioner, through great inspiration and energy. And this aspiration, man is, out of this aspiration, man has created all this. Two most basic factors in man's life, matter and spirit. This unity is the core and movement of humanity. Is there no spiritual value in the inspired works of man? So, what is matter? And what is no matter? Sorry, what is matter and what is spirit? I won't go. This is a very complex question. We may discuss it during the talk next Saturday and Sunday. Matter and spirit. What is spirit? Holy Spirit of the Christians? When you talk about spirit, what do you mean by that word? Spirit of man. The spirit of man has killed, right? Thousands of people. The spirit of man has created disorder in the world. So one must use these words carefully. What do you mean by all this? That inspired works of man from the ancient days of Babylon, Sumeria, and so on, the ancient Egyptians, they have created marvelous temples. They have been inspired by a concept. May not agree with me, but kind of follow this. By a concept, by imagination, by a hope, by some kind of desire for the highest. Right? That is out of that inspiration they have created this. A church, the Norman church, beautiful, quiet, and the great cathedrals of the world. The Muslim, Islamic mosques, Santa Sophia in Constantinople. Marvelous things. And the ancient temples of India. Now, the question asks, have they no spiritual value? Spiritual value in inspired works of man. What do you say? Moment when you depend on something outside of you whether the greatest architecture, the greatest mosque or the temple, which have been all inspired. They say so. Suppose they are inspired, and I look to them to inspire me. Right? I read a marvelous poem of Keats, one of the odes of Keats, which really most extraordinary, beautiful poems. And I get inspired. Therefore, I depend on something that will inspire me, right? And to that inspiration, I attach a spiritual value, right? On one side that. Then I take drugs. Suppose one takes drugs. I have never touched the beastly things. Suppose one takes drugs. You get some kind of extraordinary elation, right? And you call that tremendous inspiration, reach high. So you depend on drugs, right? You go to the Mass every Sunday or every day, and the repetition, the beauty, the color, the rhythm, the incense, the whole thing inspires. But when you leave all that, you are what you are, right? You may have changed a little, but basically you are what you are. And when it depends on something outside of you, whether it's the poem of Keats or Shakespeare, or some inspired work of a man who built, not one man, anonymous people who built the cathedrals, the temples, and the mosques. When you look outside to be inspired, or when you seek inspiration, then you are really lost. We don't seem to realize, if one may point out most earnestly, that to depend on others, however spiritual, however inspirational, it's another form of drug. This may be a hard saying, but mankind has been inspired by wars, right? By great religions, and therefore they in their turn have killed people, right? Consider what the Christians have done.
So is it just our conditioning that makes us think killing
Beg
and
pardon?
destruction is wrong?
What?
Is it just our conditioning that makes us think killing and destruction is wrong? Maybe it's just as valid as a creative act. Maybe it's just part of life.
Je n'ai pas compris.
Is it just our conditioning?
Is it just our conditioning that
Yes,
makes us
madam,
think
I've been saying this all my life. And we depend on others to uncondition the brain that is so heavily conditioned, programmed. And the speaker says, please look at it, watch what dependence does, Whether I depend on my wife, on a priest, on a book, on a church, or math, anything. I become a slave, thoughtless, romantic, emotional. And if one wants to live that way, you're perfectly right to live that way. That way leads to endless destruction. Look what is actually happening in the world. One ideology at the Russians against the other ideologies of the other people. And these ideologies are part of us. If we want to keep those ideologies, those conclusions, those inspirations, those activities of mass and so on, you keep it. But if you want to break all this conditioning, you have to start with yourself. And nobody in the world is going to help you. You can listen to the speaker, read his books and so on, but the fact is you have to be a light to yourself. And you cannot depend on the light of others. If you depend on lights of others, their light is not right, is not lit. You are following your own illusions. George, we have talked nearly 2 hours. May I get up now?